but today I come to you as an art activist with the loving intention of planting sacred seeds in your spirit. Thank you to the IPASA team for the invitation to deliver Provocation. I pray that these sacred spoken seeds find fertile soil in the ground of your soul. And as has become my traditional opening whenever I do these provocations, I'm going to invite you all to take a deep breath in and inhale the privilege of being in my presence today. And exhale out any entitlement you think you have to that privilege. Thank you so much. I begin not with words, but with breath, which really and truly is the first currency. It is the original endowment. I invite you to close your eyes if you're willing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, and feel the weight of your body in this chair. Feel the fabric of your clothes against your skin. Feel the subtle hum of this beautiful place. Now bring your awareness to your hands, these instruments of holding and release. What do they cradle today? What weight do they hold? Could it perhaps be the smooth, cool weight of a grant-approving pen that has signed 1,000 promises? Feel the history in your hands. Remember the lineage of decisions that led to you being here in this room, holding this philanthropic power. Now place a hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm, that stubborn, faithful beat, drum, drum, drumming along. This is the most profound and personal grant you have ever received. Your heart. It asks for no application, no justification, no qualification. It requires no reporting, nor quarterly monitoring and evaluation. It simply gives you life. It simply gives as a thankful giver, not expecting thanks from its receiver. Now I invite you to feel for the space, the quiet, often ignored gap between that loving, life-giving heartbeat and the measured, cautious, quarterly pace of our ahistorical funding strategies. Feel for the space, the quiet, often ignored gap between the fierce, loving impulse that made you say, I must help, I must fund, I must make the world a better place. And the polished, egoic frameworks that say we must assess, we must evaluate, we must mitigate the risk of our funds, and we must closely monitor. Just feel for that space. Sit in that dissonance, for that is not a strategic gap, that is a soul gap, beloveds. It is the spiritual reckoning of our current transition out of our polycrisis into regenerative futures. It is the somatic truth of a question we are always too polite to ask. Does the rhythm of our care match the rhythm of our crisis? Does the rhythm of our care match the rhythm of our crisis? I invite you to open your eyes and see that you are not alone in that gap. You are not alone, beloved capitalist savior. You are not alone. It is why I write a love letter to you, beloved, for you really, with all the grace, you really should not exist. For if you do your work really well, there would be no need for you, beloved capitalist savior. Don't you know that no money is good money? Are you aware that while your pockets are deep, your heart is shallow? There is abundance in your banks, but scarcity in your spirit. You are caught between old extractive logics and a regenerative emergent consciousness. And in that, in between gap space, you are asked, what really is the purpose of your purse? What really is the purpose of your purse? And how do you keep your purse locked on purpose in the midst of all this chaos? For the world is burning and Mother Earth, she is tired of our extractive churning. And you are the ones responsible for funding the building of the future. But are your imagination infrastructures up to the task? Are they really up to the task when your heart flutters at the sounds of historical truth? Your stomach and chest and bum holes get tight at the naming of white supremacy and racial capitalism. Why? What is that? What is that? And what futures can you be building when you think the work required to reimagine the future because of the past seems unnecessary, if not impossible? The problems you seek to solve as philanthropy are your origin story. And to distract us all from the truthful telling of that story, you serve us cheese and wine. But as was said, we do not care for your wine and cheese. So just share your resources, because talent is universal, but opportunities and access are not. So just give to the horses with horns. Share wisdom, unrestricted. Be full of trust in those that will live in the future you will not see. Grant with no conditions and liberate the future's ability. Stop reducing it to your ideas and your shapes simply because you currently hold the power of resources you had no right to hoard in the first place. The power plays between the haves and the have-nots are uninteresting. The ego needing detailed reports for access to funding that can build the future is deeply disturbing. And ego death is required, beloveds. So disrupt yourselves, go deep into the not knowing, sandbox some strange things. Create more possibilities out of the seeming impossibility, so you must rupture. With the fiercest love imaginable, you must disrupt the deeply ingrained inherited stories, because what is the greater risk? A well-resourced activist with a salary and proper health insurance, or a burning planet? Is the real risk to the future a failed project or continued systemic oppression? We are fretting over the politics of risk and impact, but the future is solving for X. And X is the variable of your courage. It is the willingness to be truly disruptive, transformative, regenerative. The polycrisis is not waiting for your grant cycle or for your fancy polished reports, nor is it waiting on your belief that the existing systems just do not work. Much like the sun does not need your belief to rise each morning, the polycrisis exists, and it is a fire that feeds on your hesitation, it feeds on your dissonance, it feeds on your impatience, it feeds on your systemic ignorance, it feasts on your lack of courage. So we must rupture the myth of the fortress of wealth. Wealth is water, and water held too long becomes stagnant, a poison to the community, and so it must flow. It must find the watershed. It must reach the parched earth of injustice. And so how do we satiate this thirst for true justice? We satiate it with a simple, terrifying, and liberating admission. An admission that this land, this soil, knows the grammar of extraction, and it knows it well. It is an admission that we have a debt to repay, a profound moral and spiritual debt to the future. This is the ultimate act of philanthropy, not the writing of grant checks, but the rewriting of future destinies. The call to action is to use your privilege, power, resources, your access, your voice, your capital to lovingly, ruthlessly, strategically, and with deep intention collaboratively dismantle the very architecture that granted you your power. You are to become a regenerative bridge to the future, and not the keepers of gates few can fully access. The call to action is to understand that the most strategic, highest impact investing you will ever make is in the hospicing of your industry. It is in the creation of the world that no longer needs your philanthropic charity because it has finally solved the problem of injustice. And so I ask you, you privileged few lucky enough to hear me today, when when the future, in its gentle and terrible wisdom, writes its ledger of this time, what will it say of you? What will it say of this precise moment? What will the future say of your name? Will it speak of your capitalist savior tendencies? Will it speak of how you drove impact and mitigated risk? Or will the future find your fingerprint on the hinge of history? Will it find it on the moment we turned, find it on the moment we chose not to protect the castle, but to plant a forest where everyone can simply breathe the air? I invite you to think about your legacy and ask that you perhaps allow your legacy to not be what you protected, what you preserved, but all that you made possible. The conditions of imagination, infrastructures, that it all begins with an intergenerational breath. It begins with the remembrance of your heartbeat, dancing to the drumming of the sustainable rhythm of your care. It begins when you remember that the original grant, your heart, is the first endowment. It begins with the choice to choose, a choice to find the courage of our convictions. We're together, stronger, because we chose to find the courage of our care. And with that, I thank you.